Hi, everyone. This is Cody Houdek with your Overtime Heroics post-game show. I'm going to be hosting today. This is the very first episode. I've never done a live show before, so I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a little bit nervous right now. Right before doing this, I was like, Cody, why don't you just record a show and then post it like you would normally post a video? And I thought to myself, it's a great idea. I wish you would have thought of that before posting on Twitter that you're going to go live. But whatever the case, I'm here right now. We're live and we're going to test it out. So today I'm going to be talking about the Milwaukee Bucks Miami Heat game that just took place. And it looks like the Milwaukee Bucks just locked up the number one seed in the East. It didn't look like this was going to be the case. This was a tale of two halves. In the first half of this game, the Miami Heat were on an absolute tear. The Bucks were turning the ball over. The Heat weren't missing from three. It was really looking like a tough game. I think they were up by 23 at one point. But then the second half rolled around, especially in that fourth quarter, and the Bucks really turned it on. So let's talk about some of the things specifically that happened in this game. Number one, the thing that stood out to me was Giannis and Antetokounmpo shooting 12 for 12 from the restricted area. Now, my colleague, Nate Georgie, over at Premium Hoops, just wrote an excellent article about Bam Adebayo. And one of the things he says in there is that Bam might be the most well-equipped player in the league to guard Giannis. I think I agree with him. I think, and he even says it in the article there too, I think besides Joel Embiid, Bam is definitely right up there as being one of the best players in the league to guard him, but that just didn't pan out today. Whatever it was the case, Giannis couldn't be stopped when he went to the paint. A lot of it happened in transition. Just changing my mic a little bit here. Whenever he was getting out on the break, he just couldn't stay in front of him. He was able to Euro step around guys. He was spinning around guys. Once in a while, the Heat were able to step in front of him. And in the half court, I think it was in the first quarter, Jay Crowder was able to lock him up with causing a jump ball. But beyond that, there really wasn't anything that the Heat could do against him. And this is really where Bam Adebayo needs to develop as a defender. He's excellent out on the perimeter. He can step out and stop driving guards. But as a rim deterring presence, somebody like Rudy Gobert, Kristaps Porzingis, or even Brook Lopez, he's not quite at that level yet. I wouldn't quite put him into that top 1, 2, or 3 defensive player of the year candidates right now. So that was one thing that obviously really stood out just from looking at the stats. The next thing that actually stood out, I'm going to go over to the Miami Heat for a second because I need to talk about Duncan Robinson. This dude reminds me of like 2015, 2016, maybe the year after Stephen Curry, the kind of three-point shooter that just bends defenses. And he bends them so much, not just because he's such a good three-point shooter, but because he's so well conditioned and he knows how to cut super well. I don't remember who was making the point during the game, but one of the announcers, and maybe they were trying to flatter Reggie Miller as he was there, but one of the announcers was talking about how Eric Spoelstra, the coach of the Miami Heat, makes his players watch film on Reggie Miller and practice some of the types of cuts that he used to make in the 90s and early 2000s to really master that move and get it down into their offense. And that really shows, especially with Duncan Robinson. There were a few times that, he would go off a pick and roll. He would pass it back to the screener, get a handoff, pass it back, and then sprint again, cutting to the basket or cutting out to the three-point line. And his just constant movement opened him up for a lot of threes. Let me actually pull up his stats right now because Duncan Robinson ended up shooting 5 for 9 from three, 55% from the three-point line. And the Heat in general are the best three-point shooting team in the league by percentage, right? They usually shoot somewhere in that 38% range. And today they ended at 46%, 45.7% to be exact. So Duncan Robinson obviously was a little bit more on fire than usual, but that constant movement, the process of him getting open on some of those shots are what he can replicate makes the Miami Heat so dangerous from three. Something else that actually makes Duncan Robinson and the other Heat players more dangerous without a creator like Jimmy Butler being on the court, Jimmy Butler didn't play today, is the passing ability of Bam Adebayo. Now, I've talked a little bit in prior videos and articles about the Milwaukee Bucks playing a drop defensive coverage. And basically what that means is when there's a pick and roll and they're defending it, especially their center, Brook Lopez, he'll drop back in the paint because the Milwaukee Bucks don't want any teams to score in the paint. They're the best team in the league when it comes to preventing other teams from scoring in the paint, as in the percentage of shots against them in the paint. They're also the best team in the league at defensive field goal percentage in that restricted area. And a lot of that has to do with that drop coverage. But today, something I was noticing is that when Bam had the ball on the perimeter, Brook Lopez would get up really close to him. He wouldn't give him a ton of space. Even though Bam isn't a great shooter, he can kind of fire from that 15 to 16 foot range. He showed off a couple, or at least willing to shoot those jumpers. But Brook would get really close to him. And what that would do is it would open up the paint for cutters from the Heat, right? So the Heat don't necessarily need to have a mega creator, not somebody like a James Harden or even a Giannis for the Bucks, because with their intricate series of off-ball screens and cuts, they would just go straight to the basket and Bam would be able to find them. And especially in that second quarter, I think it was, he was really hitting a couple of cutters really well. I saw Tyler Herro took advantage of it a couple of times. One of those times he got the ball and made a beautiful pass out to Jay Crowder for an open three-pointer. So that passing that Bam has really opens up the court for the Heat, and especially, like I said, when they don't have that main mega creator of a player. So that sort of went away. I don't really even know what happened. It's tough to explain, but sometimes that synergy between teammates just kind of disappears after a while. But that's what it looked like in the fourth quarter, is they couldn't quite capture that same magic that they had earlier in the game. All right, so that's what I noticed on the Miami Heat side. Let me take a look at my notes really quickly here. Oh, from three, that's actually what was killing the Bucks, is that the Heat were shooting 13 for 24 from three after the first half. I mean, I guess this is one of those, you have to trust the process to kind of co-opt what it is that the Sixers were doing. But the Bucks knew, the Bucks allow a lot of three-pointers against them, and they knew that the Heat probably weren't going to keep up that same percentage, right? They're playing the numbers on that sort of game. And this time it worked out for them. And I think they have the philosophy that, hey, if the Miami Heat are going to shoot 60% from three against us the whole game, we're not going to win this game. Okay. So they stuck to their guns throughout that entire performance. And it actually worked out really well from them, because if you look at the shot chart from this past game, which I am pulling up now to look at, the Miami Heat actually shot below league average from all areas within 2-point range, right? They were above league average in percentage from above the break and then one of the corners, but everywhere inside 2-point range, the restricted area, they were 13 percentage points worse than league average. From short mid, they were about 17 percentage points worse than league average. From long two, they were 10 percentage points from league average. And that's how the Bucks are going to get you. They're going to force you to go and take these really difficult shots in the paint and take these really tough contested pull-up mid-range shots from two. And that's essentially how the Bucks ended up winning. It's a combination of Giannis just being unstoppable when he gets to the paint, and their defensive system just forcing tough shots throughout the whole performance. The other thing that really helped in the fourth quarter was Chris Middleton really came alive. There was a specific play where Andre Iguodala was switched on to Middleton, and Middleton gave him a little shimmy in the mid-range, turned and hit a Jordan-esque fadeaway. That kind of just set up the rest of the fourth quarter. At another point, Chris Middleton tried to throw a lob to Giannis and just banked it in. A few minutes later, he tried to draw a foul on Bam after he switched on a pick and roll on three. So he threw off this weird contested leaning three-pointer and he banked it in. When that sort of thing happens, there's just nothing you're going to do about it, right? And so Middleton's shot making really picked up in that fourth quarter. In the third quarter, something that really turned around too for the Bucks was the fact that they got a lot more physical on offense. They ended up shooting an astounding 15 for 15 from the free throw line. I'm starting to hear my lips snap a little bit. I'm going to take a drink of water quickly. So yeah, the Bucks shot 15 for 15 just from 15 for 15 from the free throw line just in the third quarter. Okay, and so that sort of set the stage for them in that entire second half. But in that first half, I was really concerned because of their stagnant offense. The Bucks offense really relies on a lot of driving and kicking. One player drives into the basket. The rest of the opponent defense has to, they have to go into the paint to try and stop the driver. The driver kicks it out. That player either shoots a three or drives in, and then it just continues. The issue with that is when you have a really good rotating defensive team, a team like the Raptors or a team like the Heat even today in that first half, it shuts it down. There's no variation in the play. Whereas the Heat are having a lot of off-ball action. They have back screens, they have cuts, things like that. The Bucks are really heavily reliant on that drive and kick philosophy. And like I said, Giannis ended up shooting 12 for 12 from the restricted area, so it worked out for them. But I would really like to see them have some sort of plan B because it wasn't working for them in the first half here. So yeah, I'm looking over my notes right now. I'm trying to think if I forgot anything. Oh, something that really stood out too, and I think they mentioned it in the broadcast, was that the Heat having to rely on some of their younger players, somebody like a Tyler Herro or Duncan Robinson, who, like I said, fantastic off-ball player, can't really create much when he has the ball in his hands. But Tyler Herro tried to do maybe a little too much at times. He had a couple really costly turnovers. He would drive into the paint in that fourth quarter, and he was sort of baited, I think, especially by Eric Bledsoe, who looked really solid on the defensive end. He hit a really clutch three in that fourth quarter. But he was Tyler Herro was baited into throwing a couple errant passes on a pick and roll, and he ended up throwing 5 turnovers during this game, which definitely didn't help their chances since the Bucks ended up scoring 27 points off turnovers today. So ultimately, I think this would be a really good 7-game series. I would love to see it. I do think that Bam, if he could improve his performance against Giannis like he typically could, that definitely would have made the series better. And I would have loved to see Jimmy Butler play just because of the defensive synergy between the two and the fact that he can actually create a little bit more on ball. So that would definitely make the series more competitive. But I don't see the Miami Heat replicating this sort of 3-point barrage always against the Bucks. And I think that might be the thing that separates them and gives the Bucks the edge in a 7-game series. I'm definitely not saying the Heat could beat them in a 7-game series. The Bucks would more than likely win that series in maybe 5, maybe 6, but I would say probably 5 games. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for tuning in. Maybe I'll do this more in the future. Maybe I'll have some more people on with me. We'll see what happens. But thanks for joining me today. Make sure to like and subscribe. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.